Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Debra DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio on Studio B. Today we have two guests, Geraldine Orozco and Susan Plunket, who is a doctor. And I'm not going to go through their bios because these are repeat people, and I've got a very wonderful page put up on aquarianradio.com where you could read everything about them. I've got pictures and their books and videos and all kinds of things. So before I bring them on, Dr. Lessin, say hi.
Hi.
Literally, he's saying hi. Okay, I'm going to welcome back Geraldine. I'll start with you. Excuse me. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you've been on our show several times, but maybe these are new listeners. Tell us about your background and how you've come to be a presenter, speaker, world-renowned personality. Take it away.
Well, thank you very much for the intro, and Dr. Lessin, wonderful to connect with you guys here again today. My background kind of began quite far away from any of these things, really, other than my spiritual, personal practice of meditation, which started at the age of 8, deepened throughout the course of my life, I guess, going through the corporate world, and then as an entrepreneur, starting my own event planning company here in the San Francisco Bay Area, really inspired me through meditation and seeing the results of meditation in my life, in my successful life, with either financially, emotionally, and in creating abundance. I decided to share that gift with others. So I began to teach meditation, and I funded Bay Area Meditation, which now has turned into a corporate meditation program. So we teach meditation to companies like Google and Facebook here in the Silicon Valley. And so I think my journey through first starting in the meditative practices and mindfulness kind of got me curious about how we heal ourselves, how we can begin to transform from a state of suffering into a state of awareness and choosing what we then experience. So I was very interested and curious about quantum energy healing, shamanic energy healing, and so I became certified in those healing modalities to understand a little bit more about them. And but it wasn't until my experience through a interdimensional contact experience in 2019 that activated my ability to see the multidimensional body, that I even began to understand what those healing modalities really did within our body as I saw them through my work. So this is where I come in. I decided to get certified as a hypnotherapist in order to assist others that are having these kinds of interdimensional contact, trying to understand the phenomena so that we can understand, how are we co-creating these experiences, and how do we have these repetitive symptoms arise, physical, psychological, as a result of these kinds of contact experiences. And they really truly affect many people, mentally, emotionally, in many different ways. So this is kind of my focus and what I do now. And that's how I got started.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your first contact experience? And then
Sure.
We'll pass it on to Susan. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So my first contact experience was completely conscious, wide awake, in October 2013. All of a sudden, I wake up to a bright light in my room. I'm awoken by that bright light, and I see my phone, and my phone says 3:33. I wait a little while thinking that it's a car that somehow positions itself to light my room. But after a while, I get out of bed and I walk over to the window. And as I'm looking through the mini blinds of my window, my entire body becomes completely paralyzed. I can't move. I can't speak, even though I want to scream or yell or ask for help. My entire body can't move, and I am taken from my room, from inside of my room, outside over my garage. My bedroom is right above a garage, and so I'm brought into this bright light where coming out of that bright light, these tall grays, 6 of them, which are about 7 feet tall, with large, literally what we depict as grays. And one of them raises his hand and removes the fear and the terror out of my body. And so I am now calm. I'm hearing the word telepathically, calm. And he brings me into the craft with these other grays, and I'm being introduced to some information. I see my aunt there in her nightgown, paralyzed, can't move as well or even see me. I'm shown a holographic prism, this incredible advanced technology of this holographic shapes and imagery all around me. And they introduced me to a bunch of information regarding my past experiences with them. Apparently, it hadn't been the first time. But the more impactful thing was that they introduced me to these little children that were presented as my own. And as they are introducing these children to me, I'm looking at them, making eye contact and connecting with them, and I see myself in the child. And I begin to question, where did this child come from? How did this come to be? Who's in charge of this? What is this? Is this happening to other people? I have all these thoughts in my mind. Next thing I know, the children is communicating with me, connecting with me, and all of these memories of having connected with them previously begin to emerge. Moments of me holding the child as a baby, giving, feeding the child, or very strange memories start to come up. And next thing I know, it's 6 a.m. and I am brought back. I am facing down on my bed, at the edge of my bed, and I feel like I got hit by a truck. And the next Monday, when I see my first meditation client, I become very sick because I begin to see that I can see their entire multidimensional body. I can see colors, shapes, lights. I can feel what they're feeling, see what they're thinking. It's almost as if the veil had ripped open. And I could not leave my house for 3 months after this experience because it was very powerful. So that's the story.
Wow. Okay, we'll pick up and ask more questions. Susan, Dr. Susan Plunket, hi.
Hi, how are you all?
We're good.
Oh,
Glad
wonderful.
to hear that.
Yeah, we're in Maui, so it's beautiful here. How are you guys doing in the East with the winter coming?
Winter has come to New York City. Yeah, that was a fascinating story Geraldine just told. My head is kind of reeling. That was wonderful. I can imagine what she sees. Like what it's like to see somebody. What?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You speak. I was just going to put a joke. If we succeeded, we got your head reeling. But go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. I live in New York City. I'm a science fiction writer and a clinical psychologist who practices Jungian psychotherapy with adults. And my favorite thing to do working with people is dream interpretation. I love that work. I love hearing people's dreams because I believe that the unconscious speaks to people in their dreams, and dreams see around corners and into the future. I mean, the early Jungians really called the unconscious what it was, the divine. Jung, Maria Louise von Franz, Barbara Hanna, they thought of the unconscious really as God. We're more careful now. I don't know if it's careful or cowardly. We don't really talk about the unconscious as God, but I believe it is. So I believe God is speaking to us every night in our dreams if we listen. So I've been in private practice for the past 31 years. And about 10 years ago, I was speaking with an archangel through a shaman that I had been working with for some years and was directed to write a trilogy. And I didn't want to do it. I was like, I ain't write that. I'm busy. I have a kid, I have animals, I have a husband, I have a life, and I'm not doing it. But then after a month or so, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And they had told me, the archangels called orcs by this shaman, that it would just be downloaded. So I just started writing. And Mission from Venus was the result. That book came out last December. And this December, the second volume of the trilogy will come out. It's called The Wanderers on Earth, which is higher dimensional beings incarnate on Earth to help us wake up to who we really are. Higher dimensional galactic beings capable of immense love. And I am currently writing the third one, and that one is coming a little slower. I try to keep my channel open, but there are times when it's not. And then I just have to be peaceful and wait until I get the next download or the next message. And I think during this period of reboot that the planet is going through and we're all going through, which COVID has helped us with, to realize that, it's one bug to connect us all, to show that we're all one, e pluribus unum, we are all one, that may be have interfered with just me receiving this book, but starting to come again now that the election is over and we'll finally be rid of this orange Cheeto in the White House, and maybe peace can be restored to the land, because that e pluribus unum is the motto of the United States. And that is a very, very high motto, that we are all one. And we need to be the way shower again, instead of, crippling the world. Anyway.
Yeah, it's really funny that the trumpet has said, I'm not going to give any cures to New York City. We'll give it to everybody else, but not New York City.
Yeah, well, I have a word for him. Pfizer is in New York City. It's a New York company. So he can, eat shit and die.
Okay.
Oh my God, you guys are hilarious.
We have to laugh. Okay, so you have this story that you're basically downloading or channeling, and it's probably very real and exists, and we have these little words that we filter, and you say, oh, it's somebody else giving it to me, and I'm just downloading it, and just so we can kind of get it down on paper. I have the same thing going on here. I have book 1 written. I can't even get book 2 finished, and I know it's at least a trilogy, but it's definitely coming in from that subconscious mind. What are you going to say, Sasha?
Well, I was just thinking about Dorothy Spencer when I was in Findhorn. The person who founded it, her old man, her husband would do whatever he said. And so, first of all, she was getting commands: go to here, do this, do that. And then after a while, with its relationship with this entity that was speaking to her, started saying, "Sweetheart, I want you to." And then finally, when she talked to our group, she said, "You know what? It was my own inner self talking to me the whole time."
So
she is God too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your own God connection. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your story, and then I want to ask you if you have anything to ask Geraldine, and vice versa. So go ahead, Susan. Tell us a little bit more about your quote-unquote science fiction story.
What it is a call goes out across the universe for volunteers from the higher dimensions, say fifth dimensional beings and above, to volunteer for a mission to train on Venus, to incarnate on Earth, to help humans wake up to the fact that they are divine. And so the first book is about the training, which is various types of light meditation and various type of powers that higher dimensional beings have. And it follows 8 wanderers, 4 pair of twin flames. And these twin flames have to, and all the people training on Venus, have to give up all their higher dimensional powers and be born as human infants. And they have to break up with their twin flames and find them again in the 3rd dimension, which is a much heavier dimension than they're used to. And they won't even know that they're higher dimensional beings when they're born as babies. And they have to grow up, they have to survive, and they have to survive dark forces that don't want them to grow up, like Dark Lords from Orion and reptilians. So book 2, the end of book 1, they're born. Book 2 opens when they're 21 years old, and they're starting to find their twin flames again, remember who they are, and they have missions. And they go about their various missions to help, like they free the kids from the cages at the border. They infiltrate Trump's White House. They do various things in book 2. And book 3 will be called Battle for the Soul of Earth. And that's what I'm downloading now. And what I'd love to ask Geraldine is, what do you see when you look at humans with your new vision? Like, what does it look like to see a human in all their multidimensional, I don't even know what to call it. There's the question.
Yeah, Susan, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful journey, and your channelings are incredible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What do I see? Well, when I see the multidimensional body, really, I realize that we are massive beings of light, and we are much more non-physical than we are physical. Physical is it's maybe even 10% of this entire human organism that is both with interconnected systems that are both biological, energetic, and they intertwine and they interconnect with the layers of our, let's say, our mother organism, which is this earth, but also with layers of dimensional layers that extend out into our, what we know as our universe. And it's very interesting, but you see the different layers of where the information begins to interconnect, and how the human body stores information, the way that the body is actually it's holographic in a sense, where it stores this amount of information in what we know as DNA, which is kind of like the massive storage system, that kind of holds all of the memories and all the information that you've cycled through and that you have access to, through fragments of yourself. And so we kind of move in and out of this information. We tap into parts of ourselves when we go into past lives, for example, people that are going in hypnosis and they enter these parts of their subconscious mind. They have the ability to access now past lives, future lives. So it's like we are just this incredible amalgamation of all this information. And I think that the information presents itself as we kind of journey and become triggers through different experiences that we have throughout our life. And the body, speaks in the language of vibrational frequency, which is a lot of color. So wherever we're holding on to maybe stagnant information, blockages, it appears within the body as a darker shade, as, maybe more stuck. It feels heavier even. And in areas where we have more expansion, or when somebody comes into, for example, their passion or something that they're very happy speaking about, you can see the entire human organism light up. It completely shifts in the way that it feels and looks. So it's very interesting, and it really goes to show, from this energetic perspective, what epigenetics is talking about, how our environment really has a way of affecting, our bodies and what's being produced, the well-being of the body, the balance within the system. So all of that can be seen when you look at this body.
Wow. So after the 3 months when you couldn't go out of the house, did you just adjust to the new perspective that you had?
Yes, it took a long time, and I think that what helped me is my own meditation, kind of diving into my own multidimensional body, because now I had kind of like a X-ray vision to what I was having in my body, and I had more of an intuitive ability to tap into what was coming up for me, even my emotions. What do emotions look like? Because what happens is that when I connect with people, it's like I merge with their bodies, and so I can feel what they're feeling. So what I began to realize that if I, started to notice the emotions that come up and I dive into those emotions, I started to get imprints of memories, memories from this lifetime, memories from other lifetimes, or in other words, simultaneous lifetimes, which allowed me to have some information as to the root cause of those programs that I was experiencing in that moment. So I began to kind of go into this kind of deprogramming phase for several years. I didn't speak to anyone about these experiences up until 2016, actually, when I really decided to just change my whole life and focus, dedicate myself to this healing work. And I think that, when I realized how important it is to deprogram all of those false programmings that we take on, like traumas, these limiting beliefs, I experienced such an expansion, such an awareness and a healing also, physically, emotionally, on many different levels. So I think that inner work allowed me, through my own personal work, to help other people, or to even allow myself the idea that I could help other people by helping guide them through that healing process. So I realized there was some important work to be done there. And that's kind of how I got into my healing work. But it took a long time. I mean, it took from 2013 up until 2016 for me to actually fully integrate, all of these things that were happening. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Are you still meeting with the Greys?
No, not at all. Um, you know, I think what happened for me was that I went through a series of very heavy and quick, filled with information kind of downloads. I had a hypnotherapy sessions, several of them. And I think because I was able to clear all of the trauma from this lifetime, it allowed kind of a blank slate. And that blank slate allowed me to, in a sense, somehow channel or tap in to, you can call it the Akashic records or some kind of information about how life was seeded on this planet. So every time I would go into hypnosis, I kept getting downloads, massive amounts of information. So it was a kind of integrative process of learning and even going through several existential crises of my own, trying to understand everything that I was receiving. And I realized at the end of these sessions that this is actually information that people have been studying for years. For example, Janet and Dr. Sasha Lessin, I mean, they cover these topics. They've been researching some other people's information. They're researching their own information that we've been looking at for centuries. Centuries have been depicted historically. And these are things that I never read once in my life. So I think that awakening allowed me to understand the construct of the universe and the role that these different species play, almost like archetypes in a sense, galactic archetypes of some kind of consciousness. And then the humans have other archetypes of consciousness, but they are also interconnected. We intercommunicate with those aspects of ourselves. So my perspective really is that we are actually one. There's really no separation between ourselves and these extraterrestrial beings. And when we come up into these kinds of ET contact experiences, or we're diving into these realms of the subconscious mind, I think that we're really going into our own information. So I feel that I came into that information to understand that part. And now through filtering and cleansing out all of that understanding, I understand that there's no separation and that I can choose to connect with any kind of races. You know, I've been in contact with draconians, reptilians, you know, all of these mantid, Arcturians, all of these kinds of races that really are an extension or a fragment of my own self. So my perspective has changed in a sense. It's evolved since that moment up until now. I don't know if that makes sense, Susan.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But you said something that had really intrigued, many things that intrigued me, but how was life seated on Earth according to how you understand it?
Yes, and of course, there's so many different variations to that. This is just through my filter of perception and what I've experienced. But it's very interesting because some of the things that you are just talking about right now, things that you bring in for your books, kind of resonates with some of this information. The way I was shown is that there were three main bloodlines that come and seed life on this planet. And these main bloodlines represent lineages of consciousness or lack of embodied consciousness. And so they have, in a sense, genetically modified the human race into what we know today, into the different races, the different cultures, all of these. The structure of what we call reality was now kind of been built from the inside out. Okay, a very deep understanding of how our bodies function. And I'm talking about our multidimensional bodies, you know, how we store information, how we process emotions from the inside out. Based on that understanding, this matrix, quote unquote, matrix that we live in is kind of designed, in a sense, from the inside out. So our reality has now become a very compartmentalized reality where we have, you know, these systems, these very organized systems of control and I don't know, many different aspects of our reality. But these main bloodlines have trickled down, you know, and have been heavily preserved. Some of these lines have been very heavily preserved historically, down some of the areas of control and great power historically, starting in Mesopotamia, going through, the Vatican, all the way down to the, to the church, going to the royal families, all the way down to the presidency. And then carrying out certain agendas that were very interesting in relationship to our DNA and how our genetics were modified to create the different races, different lineages of information that were preserved and continue to be preserved and also utilized as a way to control consciousness or suppress consciousness in a sense. So this is kind of the information that was shown. I'm simplifying greatly. You know, there's so much more to that, but just to give you an idea, this is kind of what I was shown.
Geraldine, what are the three main, what do you call them, bloodlines?
So the three main bloodlines were shown to me in colors, which represent vibrational frequency of that consciousness. One was green, one was red, and one was blue. And the green bloodline represents the reptilian aspect, which, you know, originated in a more of a draconian. So the way that these races kind of evolved through the timeline of evolution were from a draconian bloodline that then kind of went down into reptilian and then genetically modified into numerous different, many different races, all the way down to the grays, and even the human was kind of an extension of that genetic modification. And so these different races hold different informations. They have different aspects of their DNA activated in order for them to travel interdimensionally or have access to specific information. So the red bloodline talks about a bloodline that is very connected to the three-dimensional, four-dimensional plane. In a sense, they are something that look like architects of matrices, or they kind of create realities. They create structures of reality. They understand the earth, the land, the physics, the science, the math, everything in order to create the structures of reality. They also understand how to work with this human body, okay, inside out. The blue line was more of a humanoid, I guess, an of artificial intelligence that merges with the soul intelligence. And these are the aspects of, I guess, some kind of extraterrestrials that are managing and manipulating consciousness or working with that. They work with energies and sexual energy, creative life force energy. So these are the three main bloodlines. And in other words, we all have these bloodlines within us. We are a product of all of these genetic modifications that began in those roots.
Interesting. Where do the Anunnaki fit in?
You know, the Anunnaki, which is how I was introduced to this information through my hypnosis, were actually somehow evolved through these main bloodlines that are coming in from originating in Draconian all the way down into these high vibrational beings that were coming into the earth. And of course, everything has polarity. So even all the races have different, expressions of themselves, evil and also wonderful, high vibration beings. But the Anunnaki was, from what I see, is that they are an advanced civilization that came in to kind of merge the gap. They're somehow a combination of this blue and red bloodline, blue and red bloodline that created the human race.
Interesting. Sasha, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have. Well, I love what you're saying, and it's so much information. But I'm just struck by the way you are with people being able to see them. Because in my practice, I breathe in and out at the same way as my person I'm watching. I hold my body in similar ways, but not so exact that the person sees it. But I identify with them so much that I'm getting bodily feedback and catches in the breath, and and it allows me to empathize with the person I'm working with, and realize that I can feel, because the separation between me and someone else is spurious anyway. So if I can make a confluent field between us, then I can read them too. And so that's just a therapist speaking, but it's very similar to the process that you the spiritual process that you've described.
Oh, that's incredible, Sasha. That's amazing. I mean, I do have a question for Susan that was talking about her books and the things that she channels through. And my question is, before I had my hypnosis, I mean, I didn't know the word Nephilim or Anunnaki. I never uttered that or even heard that word before that moment. So how did you come in to this information, channeling it, as you saw it? How did you come into that?
It was actually through work with several intuitives and a shaman, because I've always, since I was a little kid, was asking the question, like, where did we come from? Where are we going? Who are we? What are we? I remember asking my first grade teacher, who had already moved my desk away from the window and stuck me over by the bulletin board wall because I was looking out the window too much. I remember asking her, looking up and asking her, what are we doing here? And she said, aren't your parents Catholic? And I thought, what does that have to do with anything? Because I didn't grasp that religion could have any take on anything. It was just someplace you went for 45 minutes on Sunday. So I think I came in seeking. And over the course of time, through my teens and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, just was always seeking out people to question, to do past life regression, to do life between life regression. And about 10 years ago, I was in a session with a shaman, and she said, "You were a Nephilim." And I didn't know what that was. And then when I looked it up, I didn't like it because I thought it was a fallen angel, and that I was bad then somehow, that I was some kind of, and that sort of started it. And then I started seeing this other shaman who at that time was able to, she was the daughter of an Australian Aborigine, and she channeled archangels. And they started telling me things about myself, and that this would be my last life on Earth, and that I would be living in a different galaxy, my next lifetime working only with light and subtle energy, like what you're doing already now in this lifetime. That may be something I do someplace else in my next lifetime. But really, it was gifts that I received from wonderful, wonderful women, intuitives, channels, shamans, who kept giving me more and more pieces of my own story. And I just owe everything to them, that they were so wonderful and generous with me. And I didn't always like what I heard, like when they said, "Well, you were a Nephilim," or other things that I thought weren't so great. But I came to just accept it all as part of my multi-dimensions, and that's okay. And, I just go about my life. I look like any other normal person, but I have, as you and Janet and Dr. Lessin have too, many things going on that I'm more aware of now than I was when I was a 6-year-old. Does that explain anything?
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And I'd love to ask Janet and Dr. Lessin, what it's almost as if, this information is encoded within us. It kind of emerges. I mean, how we come into this stuff. I mean, do you, Dr. Lessin, like, do you feel that this is something that when you work with your clients or with friends, that it's almost as if there's a certain time when you become aware of these things as you're peeling the layers? I've seen that in my own personal practice and also with my clients, that when you go deep into these layers of self-discovery, some of us have this wisdom almost as if encoded, as if we have relived that in the past. Do you see that, you guys?
Absolutely. What happens is anyone, someone else is relating an experience, or I'm reading a book or seeing something, and I realize that the concept of other is spurious, and that it's really, these are all aspects of self. And once you get that orientation, everything fits in a universe that's interconnected, and we're fractals of the whole, and we are the whole response to each of its fractals. It's a spurious dichotomy for the convenience of our intellects.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
I came in with all these memories, very conscious of, where I came from and my decision to come into form, and I was overwhelmed by the information, and it frightened my mother. So my mother kept trying to kill me. She thought she had given birth to the demon seed. She was very superstitious and religious. So at 18 months of age, about around that time, they came in. They had to kind of shut me down, and they repressed my memories because my mother was going to kill me. And so that wasn't part of the plan. I was supposed to be where I was. But then I went on the ship when I was 4, and I was shown 24 different timelines, and where we could go and what might happen. And they went from the complete destruction of the Earth to utopian realities and everything in between. So when I met Dr. Lessin, I was 43 years old, and I had been working to integrate this information, and I really couldn't find anybody that could handle it. So I had all these repressed stories and no one to share them with. And so same thing like you, Susan, I kept going to groups, but nobody seemed to be at that level, all through the 80s. In the late 90s, I formed a Penn State UFO discussion group with another contactee, and we had, they gave us a room at Penn State University, and we had about 35 people every week, and everybody's full of all these questions and sharing their stories. And they wanted help, and I said, boy, I don't know how to do this, but at least listen. So that was part of my goal, was to find somebody that could help me integrate my story and help me learn how to work with other people. So in 1993, I met a man who was a experiencer. He was adept at astral projection, and he came to me and we had astral sex, which blew my mind. But I fell in love with him, and he was the catalyst to get me out of a completely dysfunctional relationship with a very abusive second husband. The first husband was abusive too, and I flew all the way from Pennsylvania to I went to Oahu, Hawaii, and just started my new life. Anyway, this led me to Dr. Lessin. When I look back, I go, this is so miraculous that, of all the 7 billion people on the planet, we found each other. And he's a very skilled psychotherapist, and we started doing regression therapy, and we were doing Tantra, and I was starting to really cathartic and get it out, because some of it was extremely emotional. I had been raped by my mother's boyfriend. My mother had a boyfriend. She was cheating on my father, or whatever they were doing, swingers or something. Anyway, this story emerged from me, and I'm not going to take all the time because. But anyway, I've had contact all the way up until today. I frequently still go off planet. I have ships land on my front deck. I just have this light that I can't quite explain to everybody else. But anyway, that's kind of a Reader's Digest version. But I'm so blessed and thankful, grateful for I married my therapist, because I wake up in the morning and I say, okay, here's where I was last night and here's what was going on. So I'm still integrating it. And so I'm fascinated with, like, Geraldine, you have a story. Now, I wonder if you have the future. And then Susan, you have a story. And for some reason, when I met the two of you, I don't know if you realize you kind of speak in the same cadence and rhythm, and it's very gentle and soothing. And I thought, I need the two of you on a show together, because you have two very similar pieces of the puzzle that are right beside each other.
Oh, that's
Anybody
so
comment?
sweet of you to say.
Go ahead.
Janet, are you frightened when you go off planet, when you go out? What's that like for you?
Oh, it's pure joy. It's absolute
Oh,
bliss.
wonderful.
It's there's none of these negative, we walk through this world with all these incredibly negative energies coming at us all the time. When I used to work in downtown Pittsburgh, I used to be terrified. I worked late. I was going home when it was dark. I'm a short. I'm only 5'2", and I kept wondering who's going to attack me. And so when you go to these other, at least where I'm going to, everybody's telepathic, and there's no negativity, no bad vibes. So it's very blissful. I come back and, like, my DMT, third eye chakra is vibrating from this contact, and sometimes I spend depending on how long and how intense the contact, sometimes I spend half a day in, like, this higher vibratory frequency. It's almost like I've taken acid, I'm coming down from this trip and I've had to integrate. And so, no, it's wonderful. I'm so blessed, really blessed.
Wow, your story is truly an inspiration of how both of you met and how you guys are doing work together. I mean, and everything that you guys put together now. I mean, you guys create this platform and you do so much for others. So thank you so much for that. It's really wonderful and inspirational.
Thank you. And I think there's more that somehow this community can do to awaken humanity. And I know COVID is a catalyst, but do we have to go through these horrendous catalysts to get us to wake up? So let me put that back to you two, whoever wants to go first. Where are we going? Since both of you are getting downloads, do you have an indication of where are we going or where we can take this?
The information I get is that we're going to paradise on Earth, as Earth, I mean, by March, we'll be fully in the age of Aquarius. We'll be done with 26,000 years of the dark Piscean age. And within several hundred years, everybody on Earth will be fourth dimensional or above, and it will be a paradise. And that seems now to be clear. And the reason I think we've had all these difficult catalysts lately is to get more people ready to make the jump with planet Earth. Planet Earth is already in the fourth dimension. And if you want to incarnate here, you have to be able to hold enough violet light to withstand the frequency that the planet will be in, as Earth will now be a fourth dimensional planet. So if you're going to stay with third dimensional consciousness, which is the duality consciousness, without the consciousness that we're all one, then you'll have to continue developing at least some aspects of yourself on another planet that's still third dimensional. But if you come into the awareness that we're all divine, that we're all one, there is no other, then you're truly fourth dimensional, and you can incarnate here or any other planet that's fourth dimensional or above. So, but I do believe Earth herself, this beautiful, beautiful planet we get to live on, is saved and will be ascending on the path of light, because you can ascend on the path of dark, the path of selfishness, really up to the sixth, is what I've been told, up to the sixth dimension on your journey back to source. And after the sixth dimension, you must make a choice to jump to the path of light, to proceed onto seventh dimension and then the next octave and the next octave, because there's no way forward through duality or through consciousness of separation and hatred beyond the sixth dimension. So I think Earth is going, and also what I'm told is that, yes, there is evil and evil has a function, but the vast majority of consciousness in all universes is positive and loving, and there's just a small bit that has the consciousness of the dark side and of evil to help us and work as a catalyst and help us grow, because we would just stay asleep if we didn't have some catalysts. So I see Earth becoming a paradise. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what the three of you see.
Yeah, I really think that this principle of empathy and realizing that you can be both separate and together, you can be, and that's the trick, to be able to, if you're meditating on Earth, you become Earth, and Earth becomes you, and you're still your separate self, and Earth is still her separate self, and you're also not separate. And that's the way to transcend any dualism, is to realize that what you think you ain't, you are too.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. That's amazing. And just to answer your question from my perspective, I think that what we're coming into is a moment. I mean, historically, if you look historically at all how the Earth has kind of come to a rise and fall, every time that technology is moving up to its highest level, I feel like there is a moment of reset that happens historically. If we look back, and I feel like we're reaching that point. We're reaching a pinnacle point, which I think that will be reached in 2024. We are at the beginning of that main pinnacle point phase. in which internally we are needing to come into that 0 point. We're reaching a 0 point universally, multidimensionally, galactically, and internally. I think all living organisms, as part of this organism that is constantly evolving, because, the way that this entire universe moves is kind of in a spiral form. It's natural. Evolution is a natural expression of the design of this organism that we take part of. But one of the things that is happening right now, and we see how it's been speeding up our awareness of our what we're eating, the awareness of our bodies, of our emotions. Now we're coming into the internal awareness of how all of these parts play a role, how they intercommunicate with one another. I think that the education of ourselves and understanding this physical body and how it works is imperative to the next 5 years that are coming into. I think that as we internally activate our ability to speak with our organs, learn how to heal our own body, nourish the body, the power of the mind, we're activating our DNA. We are activating the ability to come into telepathic communication, which I think is something that more and more is becoming available to many people. The ability to tap into something like vibrational language, like light language, for example. The activation of the embodiment of free will and a very clear re-education of what it is to be a sovereign human being on this planet, I think is what's going to be taking place in the next 5 years. And understanding that we choose our experiences by our emotions and what we're co-creating. So there's a lot, this powerful shift that's happening over the next 5 years will really catapult us into an activation of this body on the highest level, and at the same time, artificial intelligence wants to mimic the organic soul self, so I think that's also something that we're going to be seeing evolving in the next 5 years. And so we're going to have to make a choice whether we want to go for the artificial or whether we're going to learn to enhance and activate the organic. I really feel like that's something we're coming into.
We're so lucky to be on this planet right now.
Yes.
And go through these next 5 years. We are so lucky. I mean, our little corner of the galaxy out here on the edge of this spiral arm, and here's all this exciting stuff happening on this little blue dot. It's a wonderful time to be alive.
I agree.
I agree. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, we're going to see so many changes, and we do have options and choices.
Mm-hmm.
What I was shown with the 24 different universes or realities or multiverses, whatever you want to call them, that we are the chooser. So no matter what we're experiencing, we are choosing it.
Exactly.
So if you don't like the channel, switch it. If you don't like the road you're on, get on the off lane and take another one. So yeah, I always encourage everybody when they're talking victim and they're showing up victim is like, no, you're the driver, so this is really what you want to do.
That is so true, Janet. Just as synchronicity would have it, Dr. Lessin, you appreciate this idea of synchronicity, particularly as a Jungian, but my daughter, I have a 26-year-old daughter who's living here. And we have our kitchen door is painted with red chalkboard paint, and we write things on it. And I said something to her the other day about our vibration creates our reality, because whatever our vibration is going to draw a similar vibration to us. So if we're vibrating, as Janet was just saying, in a way we don't like what's happening to us, we better just check our own vibration, because we're like attracts light. And I got up this morning and she had written on the blackboard, "We are the creators. We use our vibration."
Oh, come closer to the mic. You just
We are the creators. The last thing we heard.
Try that again. You just faded away. Where are you? Come back here. Oh, goodness. Okay.
Is anyone still on? Are we still on the line?
Are we still on?
You're
Yes,
still
I
on,
still
and
hear
the
you.
music's going to start in 2 minutes.
All right, so can you finish? We are the creator.
Was there more
We're
to
the
the sentence?
creators. We create
Yeah.
using our vibration.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful, empowering thing to remember and to know.
That's what I learned on board the ship.
Yeah,
It's like,
I agree.
oh,
See, we're all connected. The four of us talking and everyone listening. Hey, all you out there listening, we're all connected.
So, and I want to just to say a little bit about in existentialism, evil is disrespect for consciousness, and so the way to banish evil is to become conscious. And that it's
Right.
all part of the larger system. And as for the Nephilim, from my perspective, historical perspective, these are the Ijiji, the people who they were being worked so hard by the Anunnaki masters. They came down and they married, and they used their guns to say, we're not going to work without beer or girls anymore. We want to have families. And they're people. They're the Philistines. They're just people. That's who they were historically.
Good.
right.
Thank you for that.
Amazing.
So we're coming up on the first break, which is going to be about 4 minutes. And so think about during the break what you want to cover, any questions you want to ask each other, what you want our listeners to learn from you in this final hour, and your websites and your books and videos and classes and whatever you want to tell us about. We do have like 30 seconds. Anybody want to tell us what your website is? Oh, too late.
Sure. Susan, okay, sorry. When we come back.
He hesitates. Okay, we will be back in 4 minutes. Please do mute your mic. See you in 4.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
The future is uncertain, I know this. Death is inevitable, I know this. But one thing is certain, as free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion, and as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically autonomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday, 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer will be quiet.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible! You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs!
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
download it to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm Janet Care Lessin with Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, producer Debra DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio, Studio B. And we're speaking with Geraldine Orozco and Susan Plunket, PhD. Before we get back into the second part of our show, I'd like to remind you to go over to the donation button on revolution.radio, and the top tab there it says donate. You can donate one time, or the Patreon button you can use to donate on a recurring basis. And we do thank you very much for your donation, because it brings you allow us to bring you these shows and pay all the bills. So, Dr. Lessin, you have this look on your face.
Well, okay, I do. I have a bunch of associations about Venus, and particularly for you, Susan. It's I imagine when you write fiction about Venus, you're talking about your own experiences to some degree, and so some of the background that we have is, a lot of accounts that say Venus was originally the Death Star that was placed there, and the Dracos came out and had domed cities, and they put our moon in place, and they settled Lemuria and so forth. That's one thread about Venus. And then we have Valiant Thor and Olmec, who we actually talked to, who came from Venus, was socialized in Tibet, and then brought to the United States. And so I want to know about your experience about Venus and where you're coming from. And I bet you've been there in some sense or experienced it.
The Venus that I'm writing about is Venus in the sixth dimension, which simultaneously exists with all Venus in all dimensions, including the third, where we just see it as a pretty much destroyed planet with a sulfuric acid atmosphere. But the Venus that I see, because a lot of my downloads are visual, is a beautiful Venus with a history of, yes, existing simultaneously in all dimensions, where everything you just said could be happening on Venus simultaneously and in a different dimension. But in this one, I'm trying to remember now, but I think the name of the group that's mentioned to me, two groups were mentioned to me, which were the Hathors and a group called Ra. and who supposedly had something to do with creating the pyramids on Earth. Those were sort of just part of the history that has come through. But the Venus that I write about is a beautiful planet where many ascended masters gather. And the reason that it was chosen, well, I don't know who chose to give that to me as the place where all of the wanderers, the reason that they're called wanderers is because they wander from a higher dimension down to the third dimension when they incarnate on Earth, where all the volunteers to become wanderers gather on Venus, maybe because of its proximity to Earth. I'm not sure why, but I see it as a sort of pink and golden place because the things that I see are visual, where everyone is communicating telepathically, and the many beings that gathered look very different initially, bipedal, tripedal, quadrupedal, skin, sensors, the first beings that I saw were just all kinds of different beings. And then a being called Lord Kumara asked them to all take a bipedal form for the training because they would be incarnating in bipedal bodies when they became human infants. So then they all kind of transform. He asked them to become bipedal with two other appendages, each having some number of digits on the end of each appendage, and on the top of the body as a receptor or a receiver for cosmic downloads. It wasn't talking about a brain, it was just talking about consciousness not being in the vehicle, but consciousness being external to all beings and just being downloaded through receivers. And what kind of consciousness you downloaded having to do with how you were vibrating, which is what we were saying just before the break. So that's what I was shown going on in my story. But I was also somehow came to realize that there have always been wanderers coming down to Earth. And I think both Geraldine and Janet were referring to that, from other dimensions, all kinds of beings coming. But in this story, a massive group was trained at once. And my story just follows these 4 pair of twin flames. 1 pair is from Arcturus, 1 pair is from the Pleiades, 1 pair is from Venus herself, and 1 pair is from the Violet Planet. And they incarnate as human. And that's the story so far.
Wow.
I wanted to give Debra a chance to ask questions or make comments. Hi, Debra. She's our
I don't have any comments at the moment.
Okay. So, Geraldine, what else do we need to know about your story that's important for our listeners to hear and understand?
Well, there's a series of information. I find it very interesting to listen to Susan talk about, how these races evolved, or how they came to take the form of the human body. One of the things that I take my time in researching and trying to, write about is how our multidimensional body functions, how the human body is made up of a holographic structure, and how the DNA is holographic, how it stores information in that way. Right now, the Silicon Valley here in the Bay Area, there are a lot of companies that are putting a lot of time and investment trying to learn how to create storage systems that mimic our DNA. In a teaspoon of DNA, we have the ability of storing the entire world history as we know it. But you know that what that basically tells us is that our bodies are, if you can imagine how much a teaspoon is holding, how much is your body holding, and what information is it holding? If it's supposedly only recording your entire life, wouldn't that just be maybe like a drop of that amount of information? So the interesting thing about the body is that what I'm finding out through this holographic DNA, through this understanding of the body, that we can actually regenerate, we can heal the body, and we can transform our thought forms from traumas and limiting beliefs into healing in more expansive ways. I think it's this example of transmutation, how we go from the lower realms into the higher realms of awareness. It's a chemical, electrical, biological, physical, all parts of the body are affected by that transmutation, or that ability to move and transform that energy. So when it comes to humans healing the body, and something that's very important at this time is that we understand how much power we have over this little vessel to heal and to, as you were saying earlier, is co-creating and choosing the timelines and how you wish to experience things. The more we learn about the technology, the biotechnology of the body, the more we can unlock aspects of ourselves that are holding on to wellness, healed parts of ourselves, extraterrestrial, intelligent parts of ourselves. All of these aspects of ourselves are available through us by going within and tapping into that information, learning how to read all of that information that is part of this, divine blueprint, in other words, where we begin to connect back into that 0 point of integration of when you release all of those traumas, all of those heavy programs, the human now begins to identify its true nature. And the true nature of the human mind and body is that it is a powerful, powerful co-creator. It has the ability to tap into these superpowers, per se, like the telepathy, like our psychic abilities, like abilities to heal. All of that is available to you at this moment. So learning how to do that is very important at this time, and that's something that I really love to talk about. The other part of my work, which focuses on the hybridization program and trauma that occurs from contact or anything like that, because it's hard for the majority of people to integrate those kinds of interdimensional experiences with their everyday lives. So just providing support for that, but it's all connected. We're all talking about the same thing.
It's really useful to think of that you have a little you that can enter your body from the outside and proceed to any place within, and can actually look at places, get a visual, and touch parts, and get those parts to talk to you, and little you can talk back to that, and you can heal and send light and all kinds of things. And we all have a little you that can go inside and check out the body and communicate with it. And it's really available to you now that you have the idea, and you're probably going to do it tonight. I wouldn't be surprised.
Absolutely. Every day, every moment, I'm so glad you brought that up, because knowing how to use those tools that are available to us is actually really the secret language of this human body, of this co-creative experience that we have. So we can manifest, our wildest dreams, the most incredible things that we want to co-create in this world by tapping into that power. But it does take time. You have to be dedicated to sitting down and taking a moment to meditate, connecting with yourself, and diving deep into the universe that is within you. It's available to you at any time.
Dr. Lessin,
go ahead.
You were just talking about this little you that can travel into your body. I have had dreams where I was walking around inside my brain, and I was trying to clean up stuff, which I now understand probably was plaque or something. But I was trying to, I was walking around in the dream, in my brain, physical brain, I thought, trying to get rid of some garbage that I didn't need in there. And I've also had a dream where I was walking around inside my legs, looking around at various things in there. But I had never heard anyone say before, as you said, we have this little self that can walk around inside our body and heal things. I'd always thought we needed to like call down scalar waves from the absolute to heal our brain, and then the scalar waves would do all the healing. I'm sure that's true too. But I love that I had
Thank
the
you.
dream, just what you said.
What we see here, this is beautiful, is that there's idiosyncratic ways of symboling the same stuff, and they're all valid, and they're all working for the person that's having that way of exploring. And so accept your uniqueness when you go on these explorations. And, you know, it isn't just that you have to stay at the organ level. You can actually make yourself so small that you can actually go down to a level of where you're seeing the electrons and seeing how you can go inside the blood. Some of the people I facilitated have actually gone inside the blood, and they see bowel inclusions and the same kind of thing you see under a microscope, but they're there doing stuff. And you see what happens where you put your consciousness is where the blood flows, where the oxygen flows, where the life force goes. So if you think about your toes getting heavy, blood will go to your toes and they'll get heavy and warm. Heavy and warm. So all these things that we're suggesting are going to be available to you forever now.
I love that. I love that. I hope all your listeners are making their toes warm right now too, because that's what I'm doing in New York City because it's cold.
We're hot here, so it's a strange world.
Yes.
Do you have any questions for each other before I go into my questions?
Let's hear your questions.
Well, I wanted to know when you work with other people, how does that help you? When you help other people, how is that helping you?
Are you asking me or Geraldine?
Either one of you. Whoever goes first.
Go ahead, Susan. Go ahead.
How does it help me when I help other people? You know, I don't know exactly how it works, but I know it makes me feel good. If I feel I've been of help, I just feel connected to them and connected to myself and connected to everyone. I feel happy. It makes me happy. And I think when I'm happy, everything's probably clicking along better in my electrons. You know, sometimes I envision, actually, since Dr. Lessin mentioned electrons spinning. And sometimes I think when I'm sitting with a person, if they're sad or depressed, that their electrons are spinning backwards or spinning too slowly. And sometimes I just ask the divine if it's okay for me to ask their electrons to spin clockwise and to speed it up a little. And then I just try to imagine that they're speeding up. And then I feel my own electrons speeding up too. So it's all different ways that it happens. Like if they cry, I usually start to cry too. Usually before they start to cry, I start to cry. Not that I'm like, you know, but I'm, you know, I can feel my eyes like getting really sad, and then pretty soon they're crying. Because, you know, a lot of stuff travels across the connection, and it's heart to heart, and it's through light. And that's why it's just perfectly fine for all of us who are working through the telephone or Zoom, because it's just subtle energy that's being exchanged. And it doesn't matter if we're not in the same room. I feel connected to the three of you right now and to your listeners, because it's all subtle energy. And that's what happens with patients too. I was afraid when COVID hit, oh no, will it be heart to heart? And then I realized, of course it will, because you're working through subtle energy. You don't need the physical contact, nice as it can be. Does that answer it?
Okay. Geraldine.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that you asked this question because it's something that I was thinking about recently. I was trying to review because ultimately, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is talking about free will and what it means to have free will. When we think that we are, sometimes when we think that we're helping other people, in fact, we may not always be doing something that is in benefit to them, because if you do something that is for your well-being or to make yourself, to fulfill a part of yourself that feels empty or incomplete, you might actually cause more harm than good towards another person. On the highest level, we're all interconnected in such a magnificent way, even before we incarnated into this physical body, that even our relationship with one another is, in a sense, designed and created by resonance. We are attracted to one another. We are connecting with one another due to our own resonance. And so when it comes to healing, the way I think about it is that really everyone that I meet is a reflection of myself. And even though I've gone through really deep healings in my life, transformed and resolved a lot of the traumas that I've experienced in my life, now when I meet my clients, I still see parts of myself within them. I recognize parts of myself. And so my work, when I work one-on-one with them, ultimately the work that we do with one another is to help ourselves, in a sense, evolve and integrate parts of ourselves that are still, because we have infinite fragments of ourselves that we still have yet to discover. It's a lifelong process, and every choice that we make creates fragments of ourselves, fragments of ourselves that are choosing timelines. So this entire life experience is a constant practice of trying to return back to that wholeness, return back to the embodiment of that unconditional love, of that empowered whole self. So when I work with these clients, it really is me accessing my higher self, communicating with my higher self through the people that I meet. And because ultimately they will not be able to heal themselves unless they really want to. So I attract clients that are in alignment with that, and I connect with that aspect of myself, and they connect through their aspect of themselves. And that's what brings us together to do this work that we've been called to do in those sessions. So I find that at the end of the day, the work that I do is holding space so that I can come into my highest expression. And when I come into that highest expression, I create an example for those around me so that they can also feel free to embody that ability if they choose to. It's a dance of consciousness, of awareness, of an invitation of well-being that I feel as a healer, we have the ability of inviting others to come into. And I think that's, the largest part of my journey in healing. So thanks for that question.
You're welcome. Did you have anything to add or comments?
Just that there's a very interesting thing that there's the transference and countertransference is no more than the universal human bonding pattern, and that we are dependent on those people that we're therapying for good feelings that we get from doing a good job and from getting paid for our work, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed in scrolling through both of your stories, your bios, that you both went into the dark side. Geraldine encountered information regarding the ancient DNA alterations here on planet Earth that operate to control the population through hidden government manipulations. And Susan says, the ETs are training on Venus to incarnate on Earth to awaken humans to their powers and prevent the Dark Lords of Orion from enslaving humans and harvesting Earth for the dark side. So you both kind of went into this darkness. What was that about? What did you learn? What can we do about that? darkness that's out there that we all seem to access now and again.
Susan, you want to go ahead? Oh, Susan.
You there, Susan? Hello?
Oh, can you hear me?
Now we
can you
Yes.
hear
Go
my-
ahead.
The dark side, yes. I just want to say one last thing about what we were talking about before, and then I will go to the dark side. Just to all of you, don't you think like it's amazing which clients get drawn to you? That's just not random. Like we meet the people we're supposed to meet in our practices and in our lives and in our marriages. We just meet who we're supposed to meet, and it's amazing to me. Okay, so the dark side. Yes. You know, I once had this, I used to go and sit on the floor for 3 hours every Wednesday morning at the feet of this woman. Oh, this was 30 years ago or so. And she channeled this being called Munka. And back then I used to be more fearful of a person than I am now. And I used to think that I was really afraid of evil and afraid of the dark. And this being that this woman channeled was so amazing, and he knew that's how I felt, because of course he could read my mind. And he used to say, you know, Susan, you don't face off with the dark side with a hammer. The job isn't even to fight it. The job is to find the light in the dark. And I think that, you know, I've tried to make that my personal task. But in the story, there isn't so much the possibility of finding the light in the dark, because the dark entities in my story, one is called Darpith, another is called Veldemiron. They are traveling the path of service to self, only service to self, which harkens back to something Dr. Lessin said about evil being lack of consciousness. And I think you can, I think maybe a lot of people will not like what I'm going to say. Not you guys, but like there are people in human form, there are beings in human form who are concerned with the welfare of everyone, that they don't want they want everyone to be free from suffering, everyone to be free from want, and they don't want anything for themselves that they don't also want for the other. And that's, you know, if you bring it down to voters, that's about 78 million Americans who want everyone to have what they have. And then there's the other group. They don't want everyone to have what they have. They just want to hold what they have and keep it for themselves. And that group is the group that's in service only to self. And I think once we incarnate, or maybe before, we choose our group, we choose our path. Will I be in service to all beings, or will I be in service only to self? And I see the evil as in service only to itself. And that's what personifies the evil in the Dark Lords of Orion in my story. They are in service only to themselves. They work with no one, not even each other. They compete with other Dark Lords to enslave humans. So I think we're making a choice. And I don't know at what level, because Geraldine was speaking of free will. And if we're all one, how much free will do we have? I mean, does a cell in your arm have free will, or is it subject to the arm? You know, free will is a question that I really struggle with. But I do think humans have enough free will to choose either the path of service only to self or service to all beings is one. And I think our new president, Joe Biden, has chosen service to all beings, or I hope that that's true.
You know, it's interesting. Another an interesting way to think about it is as you can expand the sense of self. so that, at one point maybe you identify with your intellect and your body's like a truck that you drive. But then another thing, you fall in love and have a family. Then your sense of self includes your family, because each one of those people are automatically considered. And when you follow a discipline like anthropology, like my discipline, you realize you're one with all humanity and the planet, and way more than that too. So that's another way of looking at it. The sense of self can continue to transcend the separations within it.
Yes, and the more you see as self, the more loving you are. And the less you see as self, the darker you may be.
Right. You can reach a point of unconditional love, of samadhi, Om Namah Shivaya, and many people can accomplish that. So I'm going to pass it back to Geraldine. Same question.
Yes, thank you. I like the concept that you were talking about as the question about free will, and that it's a very good question, right? How is it that if we're one, we have the ability of embodying that free will? I think that it really goes into the question of what is this consciousness. I think that is the fabric of all things that we are moving in and out of, the forms and experiences that we're moving in and out of. This entire multiverse that we share have many different levels of manifestation of that consciousness. One of the things that we're experiencing here in this three-dimensional plane is the polarity. We're here to experience that polarity which manifests itself as this good, as this bad, and when those two find balance within one another, have the ability to become whole and then to create life. I think that's the design of this universe, and how everything came to be, including all of these extraterrestrial races, all the way down to our human race. We are a manifestation, and even within the body, down to the molecular level, we're holding on to that polarity within us. As soon as we reject a part of us, or a cell in our body manifests a rejection of that own consciousness, it becomes sick unto itself. This is how we work on the molecular level, and this is how we work on the larger level, this entire human body. When we reject our own selves, when we feel feelings of self-hate, or loathing or disconnect from others, it's almost as if we feed into this rejection of consciousness, which ultimately literally becomes like a cancer that then causes illness and imbalance within this whole organism. And I think that that's true not just for the human form, but on the larger scale, this entire organism is kind of experiencing the balance and imbalance of those two polarities. The free will, I think, is something that is, we don't really understand it, because only one part of ourselves is currently experiencing this three-dimensional plane. I mean, we have many fragments of ourselves that are experiencing other dimensional realities as well, maybe 15th and 16th dimension, or 7th dimension, and all of them are intercommunicating with one another with the idea, or perhaps the goal, maybe, that we're here to experience, just gain experience and wisdom and knowledge and understanding and integration through all of those possibilities of it, possible forms of manifestation of consciousness. I think that through this human fragment, we communicate back to that whole, this experience that we're co-creating here together, as individual and as one whole organism. Together we come to the earth to experience polarity. And in this planet Earth, with these many dimensional timelines, we have a certain archetypes of personalities to choose from, experiential experiences to choose from. And so all of those are taking part in forming an education or an experience as a whole. So the free will really comes into play when we recognize that every moment we have the ability to choose how we experience each and every moment. The darkness, how I saw it in my life, and I've experienced tremendous amounts of pain and suffering in my life, and even more recently, traumatic experiences through the dark side, which I think were absolutely necessary for me to understand my own darkness. I believe it was a reflection of the own darkness that I had within me that, I was too afraid to acknowledge or see. And what I see through my personal work, and what I see through a lot of my clients, when they go into that darkness that they are either running away from, because the majority of us, we want to run away, we feel shameful, we want to hide, we want to ignore the darkness that we have within. It kind of creates this elephant in the room where it's like, big fluffy thing where we want to ignore it, but it's very much there. And it actually, because of resonance, now is dictating our life. It now creates the relationships that we're having. We're attracted to people, places, and things that match that vibrational frequency. So if we learn to look at that darkness and process that, I mean, the amount of freedom and integration and liberation that can come from that is massive. You can heal your body, you can heal emotions, past trauma, and the human has the ability to experience an expansion that is so liberating, and a state of balance that now this human organism that now has been able to look at it both sides now can come into this actual creative life force energy. So I think the question about darkness is that it's imperative. Our awareness of it and our ability to work with it is incredibly important. And everything outside of us that we judge or we see as dark or bad is a reflection of everything that we ourselves have either experienced or are trying to not become aware of, And I think we process through that in order to come into our highest self.
Wow, I love what you're saying. And so on a practical level, I can take something like, say, Mr. Trump stands for greed to me. And so that I look at the part of myself that gets a pejorative level of greedy, and I say, oh, that's just the part that wants reciprocity between giving and taking. They're both okay.
Yeah.
So if I can process that myself, then I'm not uptight about this external example of greed that is totally taking.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
The shadow.
The shadow self.
If we own our shadow, we don't have to project it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, Geraldine, about DNA reprogramming. What is that, and how do you do that?
So DNA reprogramming, just like we were talking here about looking at the shadow self, is the ability to go into, first by identifying the emotions that are repetitive in your life, the triggers that are repetitive in your life. Simply by noticing the emotion that even you're feeling right now, if you can trace that back to the root, first you're going to identify it in your physical body. And then you're going to notice that if you focus on that part of the body that's holding on to that emotion, because a lot of times our tummy is tense or our back is aching, our shoulders are hurting, and we don't recognize that if we were to focus our attention on those parts, we begin to get a lot of memories that come up. We begin to get some information. A lot of times we just ignore that information. So DNA reprogramming is about coming into your body in such a deep way that you are learning to communicate with the information that is within your body. And through that, it takes you into a journey into the root cause of the programs and thought forms that are stagnant or blocking the energy in those parts of the bodies. A lot of that information comes from childhood, right? So all of those experiences that we've had, even in the womb, you would be so surprised at the amount of trauma that is caused in the womb just by feeling the emotions that are around you from your mother, from being in the womb, from your father, that we take on really dictates the way we're going to feel about ourselves and the world that we're coming into. And so by coming back to the first 7 years of your life, which is when we receive programming, most of our programming has been embedded in our mind, we can then reverse those false programs by understanding that there are more possibilities, by looking and understanding fully the bigger picture of those experiences, coming into compassion, awareness, understanding. And I go into the ancestral lineages that are holding on to the repetitive trauma that is usually cycling through your bloodlines, either your mother or your father. Most of these experiences are passed down in generations. So we go back to the root cause, to this ancestral work, and we start working with grid work, going back to the origin of these lineages on planet Earth. And so we clear those up. So a lot of ancestral work will come up. A lot of past lives, a lot of even extraterrestrial lineages come up. And so all of this stuff we clean and we help reintegrate fragments of that soul that experienced through trauma. So the point of that healing is that it's also a training, because you're learning how to work with your own body, how to heal your body, and to reintegrate fragments of your soul in order to become whole. And ultimately, if you wish, leave this this cyclical trauma that you keep cycling through experientially. That's the point of that.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Susan, tell us about your work. How do you work with clients?
Well, my preferred way is to work with dreams, and I would really love to hear what each of the three of you thinks a dream is, and where the dream is coming from. But I think, yes, it may be, we may be seeing in dreams, we may be dipping into ourselves in our existences in other dimensions. Because sometimes you wake up and you don't know your name because you've been someone else in the dream. I mean, you've been you, but you in another dimension. Or sometimes you see other people in dreams that you know in this life, and they have a completely different name or identity in that dream, and it's much more real to you than who they are in this life. But, as a psychologist and as a Jungian, I believe that dreams, yes, come from the unconscious. And so what is the unconscious? To me, the unconscious is the infinite. It's God. It's the absolute. It's source. And from source comes all healing, all kinds of wisdom that we download through these receivers, these psyches we have. So when people bring the gift of a dream into a session, that's where the deepest work happens. It's the most archetypal work. So that is really the main way that I like to work. But ultimately, I think my job with any person who comes to me is not finished until they get into a relationship with the infinite. Because I believe that every single person who has taken a human life, a human incarnation, and I do believe we choose to incarnate on this planet, to have these experiences, we do it. We come here for the sole purpose of getting into relationship with the infinite. So that, I think, is the job. My ultimate job is to help people awaken to the idea of contacting the infinite through the part of them that is the infinite. Yes, there's a lot of listening, a lot of support at times, depending on who's come in. But I see each person who comes in is one more opportunity for me to meet God, the piece of God that's in them, the piece of the divine that they carry, and however it's wrapped up in however many layers of lifetimes and experiences, they are each crossing the threshold. And I have the opportunity to meet the divine in a new way as I meet them. And that's what my work is, to help them see that in themselves. Because that is really, to my mind, the ultimate healing. And there's so many ways to do it, as you're all saying, and as Geraldine was just saying. You know, you can heal the ancestral line back 14, 15 dimensions just by working with one person. But ultimately, for me, it has to do with relationship to the eternal and helping people to cultivate a relationship with the eternal aspect of themselves. Make any sense to you guys?
Oh, yeah.
So much. Yeah. Beautiful.
Absolutely. The world was made for dreaming. I guess it's like, I think it's Kate Smith that says something like, every life is made for living. Every song is to be sung. Every gift is made for giving. It's the same for everyone. For the world is made for dreamers. Those who dream can show the way. All we have to do is wake up and dream.
Oh, thank you for that. I love that.
That's beautiful.
Wake up and dream, because that's the real world going on. So what do each of you think a dream is? What is happening when we dream? Where are we going?
I'll start. I become aware that, you know, my dreams have become very lucid and that I have control. And there'll be different characters that will come from my past or that make no sense in the dream, but they're screen memories so that I stay within the dream. Somehow, part of myself wants me to stay in the dream, to get the message, to have the experience, and bring back a message to talk to Dr. Lessin, and we deconstruct. Oftentimes now I've always been an astral traveler, so I've gone out of my body since childhood, and I would like go through the whole process of going out the crown chakra and walking down the stairs, and then sometimes I would choose to fly, and sometimes I would choose to go down to the inner earth. And so I've always been traveling, exploring through the cosmos. So I imagine that's true for everybody. Just because I do it doesn't mean that I'm great and special. It's like something that we can all do. And so my intention to remember began with starting with a journal. So I've been journaling for over 20 years. And that's an invitation for my conscious mind to remember my subconscious and superconscious. Plus, I've always had contact with interdimensionals and ghosts. And so often when I'm in that dream state, somebody who's dead will come and give me a message. And I've had such a wonderful existence, both alive and in this dream state, which is part of my total existence called this life. You know, I've had John Lennon and Michael. I mean, I've had all these people that, you know, it's like I wanted to meet them in life, and so they'll come and I'll have a conversation with them. It's like there's no limit to what you can do, and everything is out there. It's cornucopia. It's available. So that's what I've learned. I really think that. I have a second job on different planets. I know these towns, these cities that I visit. I know how to navigate around them. We don't use cars. Somehow we can think and we can go as fast with our mind as we could in a car and just go around the whole cities. And I know there's my apartment and there's where I work and there's where I can go and get some really good food, and there's where I can go and listen to music. So, and there's the ruins. There's some kind of ruins from an ancient culture.
And pet cows.
Oh, yeah. And then one time I was doing a program of relocating humanity. I got very sad in this life, and it's like, all these people are homeless. And then I was over on my other planet, and I said, what are you doing? You have all these abandoned buildings. You know, we could bring some good carpenters and electricians and plumbers, and we could fix these buildings up, and we could house in that building there alone. We could house 100,000 people, and people wouldn't be homeless. And there's all this land to grow. And so then I went back the next week, and and I was supervising it, and they had started the construction, and so we were celebrating. There were people seemed to be from India or something, and so we were dancing down the streets, and I just followed the the dance going down the street, and next thing you know, I have a rope in my hand that looked down, and there's a cow. So everybody had their own cow, and you learned how to park your cow if you wanted to go somewhere where it wasn't appropriate for the cow. You'd say, here, sit here, and you just kind of time up, like you used to type your horse and come back, your cow will be waiting for you. So
Wonderful.
I have a weird dream life, but it's very rich. Somebody else. We have like 7 minutes.
Okay. Very good. I can just briefly share. I love that story, Janet. I have the same experience as you, where I feel like we're more free out of the body than we are sometimes within the body. We can, feel free to travel and navigate these other realms. And I love what Susan said earlier. I kind of feel the same way. I feel like, dream is your ability to dive into the subconscious and superconscious mind. It's where we have the ability to enter into, the universe of ourselves, which is all the information. We have access to all of that through dream time. I've even a lot of times have healings on people. I dream a lot about healing people. I have very vivid dreams. I feel like I always receive incredible communications in dream time. Anything that I'm not doing in my waking day, anytime that when I look back at my life, my dreams have spoken to me more about my journey than I realized back then, when I was not doing the work that I'm doing now. But I feel like in dream time, I used to dream about those things. And I know that I was traveling, and years later, sometimes I would run into people that I've never even met, but I know that I dreamed that I was working with them in dream time. I would meet them in real life, and they told me, they had a dream about me as well. So I think that we're doing work, on these other planes, on these other levels of consciousness, and it's an extension of everything that we can do here in this life as well. So it's very healing, and it's important to keep the journal and to listen. I also think that our interpretation, our personal interpretation, is always going to be the most accurate and most important for us, because our mind is very unique. It's our own experience, our own life, perceptions of things. So that's why a lot of people, sometimes they read books or definitions and dictionaries of dreams, and they can't always match or explain the kind of things that you would be able to tap into through your own meditation. So I always invite people to meditate on those dreams, maybe even break contracts if they are nightmares or things that they're working through in the dream time. It's important to do that work. I think it's a gateway to the non-physical, and it's an opportunity for us to train ourselves through lucid dreaming, becoming conscious on those levels, which will then prepare ourselves for death. I feel like it's also a preparation ground in some way for death.
I'd just like to add to that. If you're in a situation in the dream where you got to jump off the cliff or not jump off the cliff, let yourself go ahead and die and see what happens next in the dream.
Yes, that's amazing. I second that comment. That's it. I always say jump. Go ahead and just jump.
Yeah, see where you go. You might fly. Yeah. One time I was dreaming, I was talking to a boyfriend, and then I woke up to the phone ringing, and he said, we were just talking to each other, and I said this and you said that.
Wow.
I did that. We were talking to each other. So yeah, I think we really need to understand dreams. So we're running out of time, but Susan, what do you think a dream is, since you do a lot of work with it?
Yeah, I think it's everything you guys have just said. It even include, like visiting aspects of ourselves in other dimensions, lessons that our unconscious, i.e. the infinite in us, wants us to learn, aspects of our shadow that we're supposed to meet, because I think it's not only through our annoyance with some quality in another person that we can see our shadow, But our dreams can often show us aspects of our shadow that we need to work on. So basically, I think it's the divine working through us in the most general way, and teaching us. It's always about expanding our consciousness and teaching us something, whether it's a part of our shadow that we need to see and own, or about power we have that we don't know. I remember once, 20 years ago or so, dreaming that I was somewhere in some other kind of a landscape planet, and I was able to lift tons of weight. Somebody was caught under like a huge metal beam, and I just lifted it up. And it was just, it was like, oh, I thought to myself, in this dimension, I have superpowers. So, I mean, I think dreams are, in some ways more fun than waking life. Although, there can be pretty spectacular to be awake on this planet at this time too. And I know we're winding up, but I wanted to thank all three of you. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, meeting you on this landscape that we're on, and it's just been a great pleasure for me. And so there you have it. Goodbye, everyone. You can find me at SusanPlunket.com.
Okay, Geraldine, last word to you.
Great. You can find me at hybridmother.com if you're an experiencer, and GeraldineOrozco.com if you wish to get a DNA reprogramming. And I want to thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure to meet you, Susan. And once again, always thankful to Janet and Dr. Sasha Lessin for holding space for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Geraldine and Susan and Debra and Dr. Sasha. Go ahead.
Oh, it was way fun. Thanks.
Yeah, we had a great time. The recording will be available on aquarianradio.com in about, a couple hours. And we do thank you for joining us today, and much love and blessings and aloha. Debra, any final word?
Time to go. Music starting.
Sweet. Okay. Final words from Debra. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you, Debra. Bye-bye.